Hello and welcome to Championship Week. This year's champions, or those competing to be champions, will be the Goofy Ridge Runners and Erzwin Eifert. So, probably the two teams that deserve to be in the final are in the final, which is always a shame, I think. First note, I don't know why my computer is filming me like I'm in a secret underground bunker. For some reason, it's gotten really dark. I have no lights to really improve it, so sorry about that. Also, sorry it's late. This time of year, I'm now fighting two different kids for computer time, and they have both discovered Minecraft and Roblox and YouTube videos, so it's getting harder and harder to actually get screen time. Sorry about that. But the only important note isn't really waiver wire, since there's only two teams that I think are really fighting for anyone. Um, but it is, I do want to remind you that the schedule's different this time of year in that there are definitely Saturday games. In fact, I think most games play on Saturday this week, so make sure you're setting your lineups um, early as possible and changing them before Saturday games. We're not just waiting for Thursday and Sunday games anymore, so be careful with that, guys. How did the champions get into the championship game? Well, that's when Eifert just had another very solid week, you might say, with 164 points. So there's really nothing the Jabronis could have done about that. Although having Ty Montgomery on the bench after having picked him up and then never getting to use him, and him going off for 30 points, has got to be fairly disappointing. But like I said, despite a few points being available, there wasn't much they could do about it. Um, Sammy Watkins didn't go off. Antonio Brown was held, as he always is, to one of his lowest totals of the year against Cincinnati. That Cincinnati Pittsburgh game's just a thing now, I think, with 3 for 58. On the other hand, David Johnson continues to be the best running back in fantasy football. Devontae Freeman got all the work this week. I'm assuming hoping he gets all the week next week against Carolina as well. Golden Tate got the flex spot call up and did well with 20 points. Jordy Nelson was when Aaron Rodgers came back after halftime. Of course, not after any medical injections to suddenly make him able to play better or anything, but suddenly was able to connect with Jordy Nelson for a few points. Kirk Cousins did bad fantasy in our fantasy terms, but continues to be solid. And it didn't really matter because everyone else scored double digits apart from the kicker, which no one's paying attention to anyway. Stony Bronies put up a very good fight. They definitely got a good pickup with Bilal Powell, and he came up, the guts to play him as well, and he came up with 26 points. Um, so that was a good play. It just wasn't enough, and that's really the only thing that worked well for the Stonies this week. Which is happening, I think, to a lot of teams in the playoffs this year. It's just been a lot of low-scoring games, a lot of bad football, and some definite duds. Um, this year. Goofy Ridge Runners have come back to form just in time, putting up 141 points to get into the championship game and to kick the Honey Badgers, who are my long odds candidate to make the championship, out. Despite LaShawn McCoy being at least the third best running back in football this year and going off for 31 points, it wasn't enough for the Honey Badgers to pull out the victory. And Drew Brees did well. Cameron Brate put in another good performance up against Dallas. But other than that, most of the studs, again, dudded. Isaiah Crowell was probably a predictable dud. But on the other hand, Mike Evans and Davante Adams, who has had at least stretches of being good this season for fantasy, just wasn't up to snuff. Fortunately, having Julio Jones out for these two crucial weeks, or this crucial week at least, really ended up hurting the Badgers. Um, on the other hand, the Goofy Ridge Runners would have been a tough team to beat, even if the Badgers had Julio Jones. Ezekiel Elliott continues to be probably the best rookie season, at least in the last few years. Tom Brady was only able to put up 9 points, and the Patriots, especially, a team you have to wonder about what they're going to do this late in the season, but continues to be good enough. Brandon Cooks came back into form in spectacular fashion with 37 points. Latavius Murray holds his own with one of his lowest totals of the year, but still, 9 points didn't help out a lot in the flex, but it was definitely enough. The Griffin Ridge Runner is also hurting. I guess in a way, Matt Forte's on their bench. Blau Powell's one running back that just went off this week, and certainly probably be another strong next week. Unfortunately, does not have that backup, and so that won't be an option for him. Still, should make for a lively and interesting championship game to see who wins $200 for a JK Fantasy Football Knife. In other news, and obviously the more important side of our fantasy league, Feed Moncrief was able to hold out for another victory in the winner's consolation ladder by 1 point because Jordan Reed punching another player while they still had their helmet on and getting ejected after only scoring 1 fantasy point really made it impossible for the Aardvarks to, as they probably should have, overcome Feed Moncrief in the consolation bracket. In the consolation ladder round, Not Jerry's Cowboys was edged out by a single point again. A Washington letdown on late Monday Night Football. Not Jerry's Cowboys had Crowder in, was able to put up 5 points, but not significantly more than that. They has been for the rest of this rather surprising breakout season from him. Either way, Sanchez butt fumbles came off victorious. Texas Pugs and Saxby Cutler. Saxby Cutler actually soundly beat the Texas Pugs as they continue to slide. Their second slide of the season. And again, it comes down to Todd Gurley not being able to do it. And he was up against the Seahawks, but, They also got a dud, a nice 0 from TJ Fedorowicz, and I'm pretty sure he was out last week. So I suspect that maybe the Pugs have just given up for the season. Hard to blame them. But still. What can I offer you in the way of thoughts? Well, what I actually did was went back and look at our draft. What I'm hearing, because I still like to listen to football stuff, even though the season's basically over for me. But there's a lot of conversation about zero RB or robust RB, which I guess is a more traditional draft strategy, and all about what we should do next year, right? This running back renaissance, I've heard it called, of running backs coming to the fore. And I don't really... there's not really a right strategy of what to do and what not to do. You just have to pick the right players. And so I thought I'd take a look at our draft, which you can look at. It took me a while to find it. It's kind of in a weird place. Where did I find it? I think I went to, let's see here. Go to the league page, the main page, and then click on the little arrow that says more. And a drop-down menu turns up and you can see the draft recap. If you're bored like me and looking for something to do. So how does all this conversation about whether everyone should have remained running back heavy or should we look forward to next year and again continue the larger trend that's been going over the last few years, or at least the year before this one, where wide receivers are more consistent or the running backs get more injured more, so what should we concentrate on? I don't know. Of course, it's just you get that little bit of luck where the player that you really like, the metrics or the situation for just hits in that year, and I do think that's predicting the future, so it's really impossible. So where do you hedge? Where do you find your best bet? Well, for our league, I'll point out that while running backs certainly have been the story of the season for all of fantasy, quite obviously, point out there's really two, right? There's two great running backs for fantasy terms this year, and that's Ezekiel Elliott and that's David Johnson, who are not on the same team in our league. Where were they drafted? They were drafted in the first round, so you can't really draft them any higher than that. I will say they weren't the first and second running back taken. I mean, in the first round of our draft, we drafted Adrian Peterson, Todd Gurley, Ezekiel Elliott, and David Johnson. So that's probably not the right order, but we can all remember back to the start where ESPN and many other advisors were saying Adrian Peterson was a number overall pick. And I happen to know, since Andy was basically using the football guy's cheat sheet, they would not have advised taking David Johnson if he had had any earlier of a pick. He might have done it already, but still, that's not what they were advising, and since he pretty much followed their ranks everywhere else, that makes sense to me. So what does that say? That running backs definitely belong in the first round, but remember to look at these three other running backs. Adrian Peterson, they didn't ride him to the final. Todd Gurley, definitely not on the final shot team. We just spoke about Texas Pugs giving up the season with Todd Gurley, and he was the second running back drafted. Then Ezekiel Elliott, and then David Johnson. And frankly, I wouldn't have drafted Ezekiel Elliott in the first round. I would have been wrong, but don't think that was the move, but Goofy Ridge Runners certainly it paid off them. They chose the right player by ignoring or not ignoring, or it was the right gamble. And they got it because they were in the right draft position. So what ultimately am I saying here? Draft the right players? Yes, obviously. But I don't think this is a sign, and you can do what you want. Hopefully you'll all, next year, just draft running backs for the first 10, and I'll get the 10th pick again, and I will not. It's you can't go in with either one of these strategies. Very clearly, looking at our league, if you'd gone in with zero RB, pure zero RB, and I went in with a modified version of it, or pure robust RB, you wouldn't have done well. I don't think we would have done nearly as well. Now, the Goofy Ridge Runners, the two in the final, had the 7th pick, and he took Ezekiel Elliott. So it's no surprise the best teams in this league got the right running backs in the first round, but they didn't take the first running backs in the first round, is I guess what I'm saying. So Goofy Ridge Runners took Ezekiel Elliott, and then they took I forget, Brandon Marshall. So that's not robust RB, and yet they're in the championship game. Now, at Earthsman Eifert did take 2 running backs, but they took them back-to-back on the term, which is not a bad idea. I don't think that's robust RB, especially since they came back and ran 3 and 4 and drafted 2 wide receivers. Interestingly enough, those wide receivers, if you look back at the site Andy posted, that's what they thought was going to be the engine of the team, and why they predicted him to be so high. So even they got it wrong, even though they told him to draft the right players. I think. Maybe Andy came up with this all on his own, was just using them as a guide, which is what most people would do, to be fair. So I'm going to stop drawing line to A to B there, because clearly he has had the right ideas using their information. So I'm not taking anything away from the team he's drafted. He's done it perfectly. But he's done it perfectly in the 9th draft spot, which means he was stuck with the RB, if that's what he was always going to take, that was left to him, which happened to be the right one. But either way, I don't think you can walk into the draft with either strategy in mind. You just have to take the best player available, given everything that you think, and then hope that your draft spot was enough to give you that luck. Ultimately, though, what I'm seeing outside of the first round, which is what everyone concentrates on, look, Stoney Jabronis, who just got kicked out but had a very solid season up to there, took Antonio Brown with the first pick. If I'd had the first pick, I would have done the same thing. You can't really do that any better. I think ultimately, especially looking at our particular draft, 2 lessons. 1, stop taking quarterbacks in the first round. It just doesn't work. And I know why, because it seems like a good idea. Dak Prescott, okay, it's an anomaly. It's his first year, and he was getting a lot of press. I get that. And Aaron Rodgers, certainly not a bad bet. Saxby Cutler took Aaron Rodgers with pick 8. They weren't just taking the number 1 quarterback from last year. They were trying to be smart about it. So I get it, because I drafted Drew Brees in the first round last year or the year before. Because I think the real lesson looking at this draft from this year and the drafts from consecutive years is that you can lose it in the first round, but you can't win it. you're going to have to get lucky or unlucky in the first round. So what you really have to concentrate on is rounds 3 to 7. That's where it's been won or it's been lost, and then the waiver wire. So the waiver wire comes into play heavily after the draft, obviously. All right. So quarterbacks we can throw out. I'm proud to see we didn't draft a tight end, even Rob Gronkowski, until the second round. Certainly got value in that sense that most people take him in the first round, and Saxby Cutler got him in the second, and that way you got him at a discount. I think that was good. And for the weeks 5 to 9 where he was actually playing, he was good to own, let's be fair. Wide receivers have been down this year, but even looking at the running backs, if we just turned to next year and went, okay, it's just running backs from here, I think we would not be guaranteed any more luck. I mean, that's pretty clear. I mean, look, the other running backs, after those 2 that were drafted in the first round, now, again, it hurts when Eifert got the right running back in the second round, but that was Devontae Freeman. I wouldn't, in all honesty, I would not have taken that running back there if I was going to take a running back. I would have got that wrong. But it was because he was in a timeshare with Tevin Coleman fairly healthy, and I thought we saw that when he first came back. The load started splitting. They both did well. It was surprising. And the surprise was, despite all evidence from last year, Devontae Freeman's a lot better than he looks. Not because he maintained the role. He didn't. He's still splitting the role. He's just a lot better than what we saw last year. It wasn't just the volume last year. It was his talent, which no one said. No one said, apart from Andy, no one said that from what you could read or hear before the season started, because no one knew. No one, we'd only seen him in that small sample size. Anyway, but outside of those two running backs, and outside of Ezekiel Elliott and David Johnson in the first, in the second, the only running backs that hit, and we took as many, 5 running backs, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, we took 5, and there's still only 2 that hit. There's Devontae Freeman, dud, including Doug Martin, and Le'Veon Bell, who we all knew was a good pick. It was just because he was going to miss the first 4 games, and everyone gets scared off by that. Because last year he did that, and then broke his knee or his leg afterwards, and so there's always concerns with Le'Veon Bell. So how about the third round? Running backs, we've got Jamal Charles. He just never came back. ACLs, we have to remember, apparently, despite the fact lots of people have come back from them since, we're not doctors, right? We don't know. But definitely a good pick, definitely a good running back, a good gamble in the third round. It just didn't work out with a running back. Thomas Rawls, again, a playoff team that just got kicked out. Thomas Rawls got 5 points. LaShawn McCoy, I definitely think at least the third, maybe the 4th best running back this year in terms of fantasy. Came in the third round. So you could have drafted no running backs and got just a good running back performance as Andy got from his first and second pick by drafting LaShawn McCoy in the third. And then you still haven't gotten DeMarco Murray, who's the person you'd have to switch out between second and third. So the next 2 best running backs you could have gotten out of the first and second round. So it's getting the right players 3 to 7, much more than rounds 1 to 2 even. Because with rounds 1 to 2, you're definitely taking pot shots based on your draft position. After that, it loosens up and people have started to take their choices. Not based on ranks, not based on situation, but what they think is going to work out, where they start trying to predict the future. And I wouldn't have taken either of them. I'm not saying I would have got it right. I absolutely would not have taken LaShawn McCoy in the third, even if I'd had that draft spot. Would not have taken DeMarco Murray anywhere near where he came. And do you know where he came? That 4th best, maybe 3rd best running back in football? If you look back in our draft, 7th. 7th round. Move back up. How about Melvin Gordon? We've recently lost him, so we're forgetting him, but he was definitely in this conversation. Definitely a top 5 running back, at least the second half of the season, and he just got injured, which is one of the problems you swallow with running backs. I take it, but Melvin Gordon, I have to scan for him because it's not easy to was taken in the 11th round, and Andy got him too, and that's why he had 3 strong running backs. Not because he went running back, but because he got the right running back in round 11 to get that 3rd flex spot that eventually worked out. Now, true, Andy did everything right. He also got the wide receivers to back it up. But in the year where running backs were king, they made you go into the championship, as we see with both our championship teams, or not. Most of those running backs didn't come in the first or second round. 2 of them did. And the reason those 2 were selected by the teams that made it was because of their draft slot, not because they ranked them over all the other running backs. So am I saying we shouldn't go running back? No. What I'm saying is either strategy that I hear most often, all running backs or all wide receivers, is all crap, right? It's the first and second round are dictated by the draft position we get randomly because of the way we do it. Maybe that's one of the changes we should make. I don't know. Outside of that, it's getting the right players in rounds 3 to 7. That brings me back to the guys who've drafted quarterback in the first round. That's why I drafted Drew Brees that one year. It's because you can lose it, but you can't win it in the first round. And so my thought was, well, I'll just go for a definite good quarterback. And so despite the fact I always say you guys shouldn't have done that, I can kind of see it. If you're concentrating on rounds 3 to 7, that loosens you up. Or I should also say, I still don't think that works because of numbers and statistics, but still, I can understand it from that perspective. So ultimately, going into 2017, for those of you who aren't interested anymore because you're not playing like me, when we think about what to do next year, if you're thinking about it at all, it's not to go, these wide receivers didn't work for me, I'm just going to draft running backs next year. It might be to take a running back in the first, it might be to take a running back in the first, second, or third, but don't let this season lock you in to that, because very easily it can turn out different. All of us had the same opportunity because it went through 2 rounds before it got to LaShawn McCoy. It went through 5 rounds before it got to before we got to DeMarco Murray, which means all of us had at least 5 chances to get 2 running backs that could have sent us to the final. And all of us had 11 chances to get Melvin Gordon, which was one of the reasons that really helped. I could be wrong, but I remember from talking about the games each week, Melvin Gordon was one of the reasons that really helped Andy pull his record back after the struggling at the start of the season. And we all had 11 shots to get him. So it's not just draft running backs in the first round any more than it is just draft wide receivers in the first round. I think it's concentrate on everything that you concentrate on in rounds 3 to 7, because everyone's taking pot shots and everyone scored on some. You can look through round 3 to 7. Everyone got a player everyone else would like to have taken, but they managed to pick them out. So I think that's where the fight is. All these running backs, all these draft strategies concentrate in the first and the second round, and I really think that comes down to your draft slot, and then you take your best ranked player. And I think everyone, like I was 10th, I would have taken David Johnson there, even though I wanted to draft wide receiver. But David Johnson falling that far, I can understand because of C.J. Anderson the year before flagging out, and David Johnson, that was the whole argument. It was a small sample, but I just really liked the Cardinals. But anyway, I've just rattled on here, and it's because I have no more games. So I have only this stuff to talk about. Anyway, I thought it was interesting. Take a look at our draft, see if you say anything. I see us dictated in the first and second round by our draft slots. And it's after that that people have won and lost. And Andy's just got the first 2 perfectly, which helped. But it's after that he got Dez Bryant and Jordy Nelson, 2 older wide receivers who didn't help him out at the start. And now Dez Bryant's falling off again, but definitely did in the middle and towards the end. And then he's hit on... where else did he hit? Randall Cobb wasn't a good choice in the 5th. But we didn't know that, but it turned out not to be. Golden Tate eventually did pay off. And so, yeah, half the time he's hitting on the right players in rounds 3 to 7. And I think that's kind of more important than the first and second round. That's my guess, anyway. We'll see if that pays off next year. All right, rattled on too long. Merry Christmas. Good luck in your championship game, you two. And good luck casting them side eyes or insults or smack talk for everyone else. Thanks again. Great year. See you later.